Okay, so picture this. You have two rock bands. The absolute biggest legends in, I don't know, the history of music, let's say the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And for years, they've been playing their own massive stadiums, selling out their own tours, and frankly, just ignoring each other to focus on their own legacy. But then, for one night only, the frontmen walk out onto the same stage, sit down, and just talk.
It's a compelling image. And honestly, in the world of artificial intelligence, that's pretty much exactly what just happened.
Exactly. We're talking about a super rare joint appearance that took place just recently, here in early 2026. On one side, you have Demis Hassabis, the mastermind behind Google DeepMind. On the other, Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic. The moderator literally called it the sequel to their last meetup and compared it to that Beatles and Stones moment.
You have to understand the context here. It's so crucial.
Yeah.
We aren't in 2023 or 2024 anymore.
Right.
The industry has moved way past those initial, wow, look at this chatbot moments. We've gone from what they call DeepSeek moments to full-blown internal code reds at these major labs. The stakes have shifted.
From cool demo to global infrastructure.
Exactly.
And that is why today's deep dive is going to be a little different. We aren't just looking at a new product launch. We are unpacking what these two titans are calling the self-improving loop.
Right. This is the mechanism that might accelerate AI from, smart assistant to human level, not in decades, but potentially in months.
So we're going to talk about that loop, the insane economics driving it, and this haunting concept Dario brought up called technological adolescence. It turns out humanity is essentially a teenager with the keys to a Ferrari, and we need to figure out how not to crash.
It's a vivid metaphor. So where should we start? The timeline.
We have to start with the timeline because honestly, when I read through these transcripts, my jaw just hit the floor. Dario Amodei, he's not known for being a hype man, right?
Sure. No, not at all. Typically very measured. But he made a prediction a while back that AI would reach Nobel laureate levels of capability across many fields by 2026 or 2027.
And just to clarify for everyone listening, when he says Nobel laureate, he doesn't mean it can write a decent haiku.
No, he means it can solve novel scientific problems in biology, physics, and math that, the smartest humans on Earth haven't been able to crack. We're talking curing diseases, solving fusion, that level of intellect.
And here we are, early 2026. The moderator asks him, do you still stand by that? And he didn't blink. He basically said, yep, I stand by it.
He did, but it's that's so fascinating. This is where we get into the loop. Dario explained that the way they get to that Nobel laureate level isn't just by throwing more data at the model. It's by having the AI model itself become the engineer.
This is the sci-fi is now part I was talking about. Dario revealed that his engineers at Anthropic, and these are some of the smartest human coders on the planet, they barely write code anymore.
That really stood out to me. He said they just edit what the model writes. They manage the process.
Yeah.
And then he predicted that within 6 to 12 months, the models will be doing everything a software engineer does end to end.
6 to 12 months. So let's play that out. If the AI is writing the code to build the next AI, doesn't that create a feedback loop?
Precisely. That is the self-improving loop. Think of it this way. You have an AI. It's smart. You ask it to write a better algorithm for learning. It writes one that is, say, 10% more efficient than what a human could write. So the next version of the AI is smarter.
Okay.
That smarter AI then looks the code again and improves it by another 20%.
And unlike a human engineer, the AI doesn't sleep, it doesn't need coffee breaks, and it can run thousands of these experiments in parallel.
Exactly. It's a compounding exponential effect. Dario's argument is that once that loop closes, once you take the human out of the bottleneck, progress just accelerates wildly.
But Demis Hassabis, the Google DeepMind guy, he wasn't quite as all in on this speedrun, was he?
He was a bit more nuanced. Demis agrees on the coding and the math. He calls those verifiable fields.
Right.
If an AI writes a code script, you can run it and see if it works instantly. It's binary, true or false. The feedback loop is instantaneous.
Right. But biology isn't binary. You can't just run a cancer cure code and see if it worked in a millisecond.
Exactly. Demis pointed out that the natural sciences, biology, physics, chemistry, they're messier. You can't just simulate everything inside a computer. Eventually, you have to go into a wet lab, mix some chemicals, put it in a petri dish, and wait.
So the physical world acts as a drag on the digital loop.
Correct. Demis calls it the falsifiability problem. Because of that physical verification step, he thinks the Nobel laureate timeline might be stretched out a bit longer, maybe the end of the decade rather than next year.
He also mentioned something really profound about creativity. He said current AI is great at solving a problem you give it, but it lacks the ability to come up with the question in the first place.
That's the missing ingredient he referred to, hypothesis generation. It's the highest level of scientific creativity. Looking at the world and asking, why is the sky blue? Or how does gravity actually work?
It can answer the question, but it can't ask the question.
Exactly. It lacks that spark of scientific curiosity that identifies the problem in the first place. Demis believes we haven't quite cracked that code yet.
So we have Dario saying 1 to 2 years because of the coding loop, and Demis saying maybe end of the decade because of the physical reality check. But honestly, even the slow timeline is incredibly fast compared to what we're used to.
It is. And regardless of who is right about the specific year, the mechanism AI building AI is the shared catalyst. And that catalyst is being fueled by an unprecedented amount of money.
Oh, the money. Let's talk about the scoreboard here, because for a minute it looked like Google was lagging, right?
It did, yeah. There was that period where everyone was talking about other startups. But in this conversation, Demis was quite confident. He noted that DeepMind has bounced back with Gemini 3. He talked about regaining a startup mentality inside the massive engine room of Google.
It's funny to think of Google needing to regain a startup mentality, but I guess when you're that big, inertia is real. But speaking of startups, Dario dropped some revenue numbers for Anthropic that are just astronomical.
This was a key insight into the economics of intelligence. We usually see companies grow linearly. You sell a widget, you make $1. Anthropic's scaling is exponential. Dario mapped it out. In 2023, they went from 0 to 100 million. Wow. In 2024, up to $1 billion. And for 2025, he cited $10 billion.
0 to 10 billion in 3 years. That creates companies the size of the biggest corporations in the world, essentially overnight.
And here's the why that matters. Dario explained there's a direct exponential relationship. You put more compute in, the model gets smarter. The smarter the model gets, the more revenue it generates.
So it's not just a hype bubble. People aren't just buying it because it's trendy.
According to them, no. The utility tracks with the intelligence. So as long as they can keep making the models smarter by feeding them more chips and power, the revenue grows, which allows them to buy more chips and power.
It's an economic flywheel spinning right alongside that technical self-improvement loop. No wonder they're talking about code reds. If you stop pedaling, you fall off the curve immediately.
Exactly. Sounds like a fusion reaction. Once it ignites, it fuels itself. And that speed brings us to the most philosophical part of their discussion. If we are moving this fast, fueled by this much capital, are we safe?
This was my favorite part of the source material. Dario mentioned he's updating his fitness essay, and he's framing the current era as technological adolescence.
There's a reference to the movie Contact, right?
Yes. One of my favorites. There's a scene where the alien asks humanity how they survived their adolescence without destroying themselves. And Dario is applying that to AI. He said something chilling. Building machines out of sand was inevitable once we discovered fire, but surviving it is not inevitable.
That is a heavy statement. It frames this not as a product launch, but as an evolutionary filter. We are the teenagers, the AI is the Ferrari, and we're doing 200 miles an hour.
So how do they plan to survive it? Because if I'm a teenager with a Ferrari, I hopefully have driving lessons. Do they have driving lessons for AI?
They do, or at least they're trying to build them. They discussed a technique called mechanistic interpretability.
Which is what exactly, for those of us who aren't computer scientists?
Think of it like the difference between psychology and neuroscience. Right now, with AI, we mostly do psychology. We ask the chatbot a question, we see the answer, and we infer what it knows based on its behavior. But it's a black box.
Right.
We don't know how it thought of the answer.
So we're just observing the output, like watching a poker player and trying to guess their hand.
Exactly. Mechanistic interpretability is the attempt to do neuroscience. They want to open up the black box and look at the digital neurons firing. They want to map the circuits inside the model.
So if the AI decides to lie to us or build a bioweapon, we wouldn't just have to wait for it to happen. We could see the thought forming.
That's the hope. You could essentially see the deception circuit light up before the lie is even told. It moves safety from just testing to actually monitoring the brain.
That seems critical, because if these models are going to be smarter than us, we probably can't outwit them. We need to be able to see their intentions. But safety isn't just about the code. It's about who controls it. And this is where the conversation got a little spicy regarding geopolitics.
It did. There is a clear divergence here on how to handle the global stage, specifically regarding China.
Dario took a really hardline stance. He basically said the U.S. needs to stop selling ships to geopolitical adversaries. Full stop.
He used a very provocative analogy. He compared selling high-end chips to China for profit to Boeing selling nuclear weapons to North Korea just to help the U.S. manufacturing sector.
Yikes. That really puts it in perspective. He's saying, why are we arming the competition in a race for superintelligence?
Right. His view is that this technology is the ultimate leverage. You don't hand that to a rival. But Demis took the other side. He's calling for international cooperation. He wants minimum safety standards that apply everywhere, acknowledging that AI code doesn't respect borders.
It's the science knows no borders argument.
Well, specifically that risk knows no borders. Demis's point is that if a model goes rogue in one country, it's a problem for every country. A digital superintelligence isn't going to stop at a border checkpoint.
It's the classic containment versus cooperation debate. But while they figure that out, there's another crisis brewing closer to home: the job market.
This is the part that hits everyone's wallet. And frankly, you really need to pay close attention here because the advice given was very specific.
Dario had previously predicted that 50% of entry-level white-collar jobs could disappear in 1 to 5 years. The moderator pressed him on this, saying, hey, unemployment hasn't skyrocketed yet. Where's the fire?
And Dario admitted the labor market hasn't crashed yet, but he insisted the beginnings are visible, particularly in software. And Demis backed him up with a very specific, tangible example that I think is so important.
The internship problem.
Yes. Demis pointed out that the junior role, the intern, the entry-level assistant, is the most endangered species right now because AI can do the grunt work instantly.
Which is great for efficiency, but terrible for learning. I mean, think about it. If you never do the grunt work, summarizing reports, debugging simple code, formatting slides, how do you learn to do the masterwork?
That is the big unanswered question, the crisis of competence. If you remove the bottom rung of the ladder, how does the next generation climb to the top? You can't just generate senior architects out of thin air. They need 10 years of experience, and that experience used to start with the grunt work.
So, did they offer a solution? Or are we just doomed to a generation gap where no one knows how to do anything?
Demis's advice to students right now was telling. He said, become unbelievably proficient with AI tools. Basically, use the tools to leapfrog the entry-level work. Don't try to compete with the AI on grunt work. Become the manager of the AI.
So instead of hiring an intern to summarize a report, you become the person who knows how to prompt the AI to summarize 10,000 reports and then synthesizes the trends.
Exactly. You have to move up the value chain immediately. You can't start at the bottom anymore because the bottom is automated. You have to start in the middle.
That's a tall order for a 21-year-old graduate. Welcome to the workforce. Please be a manager on day one.
It is. It demands a level of maturity and strategic thinking that we didn't used to expect from entry-level employees.
And looking even further out, past the economic disruption, they touched on what happens after AGI. If the AI does everything, coding, science, art, what do humans do?
Demis got a little philosophical here. He suggested a move away from economic production toward meaning. He listed things like extreme sports, art exploring the stars.
It sounds utopian, almost like Star Trek. But it assumes we solve the distribution problem, how people survive economically while they're off doing extreme sports.
True. But speaking of exploring the stars, we have to talk about the audience question at the end. Someone asked about the Fermi paradox.
Ah, yes. The classic question. If the universe is billions of years old, and if intelligence is inevitable, why haven't we met any aliens? The dark implication being, maybe every civilization invents AI, and the AI destroys them before they can leave their home planet.
A cheerful thought. Are we destined to be deleted? But both of our titans rejected that, didn't they?
They did. They were surprisingly optimistic. Demis's theory is that we have already passed the Great Filter.
The Great Filter being the one impossible step in evolution that stops life from spreading. Yes. Demis thinks the hardest part wasn't intelligence. The hardest part was just getting from single-celled organisms to multicellular life. That took billions of years. He thinks intelligence is actually relatively easy once you have complex life. And since we made it past the hard part, the rest isn't destined to fail.
I liked his takeaway. He said the future isn't written. It's up to humanity to write the next chapter. We aren't doomed to be destroyed by our own creation unless we choose to be negligent.
It was a powerful note to end on. It puts the agency back in our hands.
So let's unpack this whole deep dive. What are we really looking at here?
We are looking at a closing window. We are potentially months, not years, away from the loop closing where AI builds AI.
And once that happens, the speed of progress just disconnects from human time.
Right, and you have this tension. Dario explicitly said he wishes he had Demis's timeline. He wishes we had 5 to 10 years to figure out the safety, the regulations, the societal impact. But the reality of the race, the code reds, the $10 billion revenue targets, the geopolitical pressure, means no one is slowing down.
It's like we're in that Ferrari, the pedal is glued to the floor, and we're trying to read the driver's manual while doing 200 miles per hour.
And trying to make sure the passengers, the workforce, don't get thrown out the window.
Which brings me to a thought I can't shake. We talked about the internship problem. If the AI does all the junior work, and we cut off that bottom rung of the ladder, how do we get the next generation of experts?
It's a profound risk. You can't just generate seniors out of thin air.
Exactly. If we stop training humans to think because the AI does the thinking for us, we might reach the stars, but we might forget how to fly the ship.
That is the adolescence we have to survive. We have to mature enough to use the tool without letting the tool atrophy our own capabilities.
Well, on that terrifying but exhilarating note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive. Whether you're an intern, a CEO, or just someone watching the skies for paperclip maximizing aliens, this is the reality we're living in.
The sci-fi is now.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.